Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the May Enterprise Risk Management Toolbox webinar. A few housekeeping notes before we get started. If you've dialed in by phone but haven't logged in by web and you'd like to see slides for today's webinar, please point your web browser to readytalk.com. In the box where it says Participant Join a Meeting, enter the same access code that you used to join the call, 9879821. On the next screen, you can just scroll down to the bottom of the invitation, enter your name and address, and click the button to register, and that will put you to the webinar so you can see the slides. We're leaving the phone lines open, so please stay aware of the level of background noise in your area. If it becomes noisy, please put your phone on mute so that the background noise doesn't get transmitted to everybody else. If your phone doesn't have a mute button, you can use the ReadyTalk controls, which are *6 to mute and *7 to unmute. If you're called away from the phone, please do not put your phone on hold because that will cause your hold music to be transmitted to everybody. You can simply hang up, dial back in, and it will not disrupt the call. As I said, we're leaving the phone lines open and unmuted, so if you have a question, you can ask them that way. Also, the chat box is available. I will be monitoring that and can relay questions to our presenter. And there's also the raise hand button if you want to raise your hand and be called out at a time when it won't disrupt the flow. With that, I will hand the controls over to our presenter, UC's EHS Director, Iraq Young.
Well, good morning, everyone. After a 3-day weekend here, welcome. And for this toolbox talk that we'll be going over today is going to be on the Risk Summit 2014, a little preview. So similar to what we've done in the past to kind of give a little snapshot of what you can expect for this year's Risk Summit. And we'll also talk at the very end a little bit about ERM University as well. For those that are counting, this is our 10th annual or 10th anniversary of the Risk Summit. So we have, as usual, some little special activities planned as part of that. This year's Risk Summit, last couple of years we've had it at Oakland. This year we are hosting in Ontario at the Ontario Convention Center. We've actually outgrown our facilities in Oakland, and we're actually lucky enough to actually have pretty much the whole convention center to ourselves. For those that have already registered, which the registration for the most part is officially closed, but we'll still go ahead and take, I believe, some last-minute registrations probably through the end of today and maybe through tomorrow. At last count, we have approximately 700 people registered for the Risk Summit and over 100 registered for the ERM University. So what we're going to do is just kind of cover some of the highlights of some of the things that you can, I guess some of the bigger presentations that you may want to look for. And then also we'll go over some of the tracks and certainly answer any questions that you may have regarding this year's Risk Summit. So one of the first areas that one of the topics is the ERM IT Bootcamp. So one of we typically do 4 workshop-style presentations. And then we have our breakout sessions, which are typically it's about a 60-minute session, and then we have such of these workshops, they're going to be more of a 90-minute type of breakout. So a little bit more in-depth type of session to be able to review. The ERM IT Bootcamp titled What's in the Toolbox, this actually grew out of a full-day workshop that was hosted at UC Davis, and which we brought folks around from the entire system to learn more about some of the EHS suite of the products that are out there and what's been going on. Within the laboratory safety environment, the ITS, or IT services out at Davis, has been really taking the lead in helping develop a lot of products or tools that will help improve the operations of our laboratories, as well as hopefully make them more efficient at the same time as we improve the safety of those. And so this will be going over probably about 9 of the different elements, products that are out there. Some of those include the Laboratory Hazard Assessment Tool, or commonly referred to as LHAT, which was actually a unique product that came from UCLA and was actually then modified to system-wide with the help of faculty from UCLA, actually across the system. But Craig Merlick was the product owner for that. And so now we actually have a system-wide solution that was really essential in helping with the personal protective equipment events, or PP events, in which we issued lab codes. It's also the most utilized with over 20,000 users now that are actually in the system. So the ERM IT Bootcamp will give you an idea of some of the tools that are available, and also they'll talk about core services. And real core services is the name now, what we call for middleware, which really makes all the systems talk to each other. And so even though you may not be in the EHS environment, might be more, whether it's the risk side or other areas, what you'll see is how can these different systems talk to each other and also get an idea of what's possible in the future. So that's really what we're trying to do with the boot camp, is to kind of get everyone up to speed in about 90 minutes of the world of what's going on within software applications. The next, one of the other major workshops that we'll be hosting, that on the middle section, the 90-minute section, our terms and conditions may apply. And this came about actually from our IT folks as well as our our privacy folks. And what started out was this little, it's a documentary about the terms and conditions that we all click on and we agree to. So that little button when we go on a website that we say, yes, we agree to the terms and conditions, and most of us have never read, what it really does is it goes through the fine print of what we've agreed to. This is about a 45-minute video presentation, which we purchased. We're going to have 2 showings of this on both the Tuesday and Wednesday for people to be able to participate in this workshop. And then the second half will be much more interactive after watching to discuss really some of the terms and conditions, from the privacy standpoint, what we should be looking at to be able to move forward on and understand the privacy implications that are associated with this. There is, if you do a Google search, you can probably find the 5-minute kind of preview for this of terms and conditions. And basically after watching that, you'll want to watch the whole about 45-minute presentation because of the implications of really what it has from a risk standpoint, both as an organization from the university as well as your own personal stake in that. Social media in medicine, liability fad or the next big thing. This is, even though this talks about more in the medicine area, I think this is actually something that really is also implications for everyone as well. And what the issue is and what they'll be talking about on this is that social media obviously is taking over and is expanding between LinkedIn and Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, obviously, and all those applications. But what they've also found now is that employers or hospitals now need to also be aware of what their doctors are doing on these type of networks, both from hosting their own blog, which may be talking about giving advice possibly, because that has professional liability concerns if they are providing advice on a website. But then also the possibility of having that doctor or someone else, nurse or other staff members, talk about what they did over the weekend, which may not put them in the best professional light. And so this presentation is really going to be talking about the implications of social media, again, as it relates to medicine. But if you think about it, it can also really be expanded beyond other areas besides the medicine of how our employees are posting different items. And of course, this has even larger implications for university, being that obviously we want to promote free speech, and academic freedom. But there is the concern, again, from a university aspect of what could happen if certain things people are posting may not be putting both the organization in the best light, as well as someone's personal liability might be part of that as well. ERM for the non-risk manager. So you're probably wondering what the big, the graphic on here is, and basically what we've learned in probably in the last several years, but since the beginning of going towards enterprise risk management, is that we have a lot of jargon, and we talk about risk treatment and ISO 31000 or the COSO framework and all these different areas. And so we have a lot of jargon that we typically use as part of it. And what our goal in is this presentation is really take the jargon out. For those that are not involved in risk management, what does ERM really mean? How do we move, really what we consider to be good management from that aspect, and how do we move those that don't have the traditional focus on risk management to really understand how they can implement some of these different areas. And with really the basic understanding that from a risk management perspective, we're just trying to remove obstacles from achieving the university's mission and goals, and that's the focus of this presentation. And again, this is another presentation that'll be part of the overall workshop that we'll be doing. That'll be 90 minutes long. Now, one of the challenges on some of these, you're probably looking and going, well, all these sound really good. Which one can I go to? We are going to try to record at least one or two of these, and then we're also going to be repeating some of these sessions as well for that workshop area. So that way people do have a chance to hopefully either attend another presentation or see the other one there. And then the last one here, you're seeing Guerillas versus Guerillas, Risks and Responsibilities of International Programs. So for those that attended the ERMIA conference this last year that was in Phoenix, one of the presenters was Mitch Keever. And we've been lucky enough to actually retain him for the Risk Summit. With the focus on international travel growing significantly over the last several years, this should be it's an area of emphasis for us. And so the title on here, you notice the Guerillas versus Guerillas, the play on words. I think we only had about 10 people from the university attend the ERMIA conference. But for those that did attend this, I think they'll all also admit that it's worth watching again or hearing Mitch speak. What makes Mitch a little unique in his presentation is that he was a researcher about, I don't know how many years ago, probably about 20 years ago, I believe, that was actually out in the field doing research on guerrillas, and at what point their group, that part of the research group, they were kidnapped. I know I'll probably get some of the numbers wrong here, but I believe there was about 30 people that were part of that were kidnapped and then basically had to walk through the jungles through this time, and then he was, not everyone survived the whole ordeal, but he was one of the few survivors of this ordeal. Since that time, he has actually now been a person that helps in this area of kidnap and ransom, and talks about some of the implications of researchers going out in the field and helping them understand some of the threats that go along with it. So for those that attended, you'll find that Mitch is a relatively soft-spoken person, a person you'd somewhat be unassuming that would be involved in a kidnap and ransom type of consulting, but he has a great story, and I think you'll also find that it is very impactful. So Mitch will be our keynote speaker on the Tuesday evening, so that way everyone can hear him talk about the risks and responsibilities that go with international programs. And then lastly, our tracks. So we're not going to go into great detail on all the tracks, but we did, last year we did try something a little different in trying to keep the tracks more broad-based. And so based upon the feedback, we brought back the typical tracks. So talking about claims management, risk financing. One of the areas that I think they'll probably be of interest to many is we have a session on Captive 101. As many are aware that we did form a captive insurance company called Fiat Lux. And so we'll be giving a basic kind of primer on what is a captive, how does it work, and what are the benefits to the university to forming the captive, as well as some of the products that are going to be coming out of the captive. For the university, this is something new for us, but it's actually been something around, I think, Harvard, Stanford, and most other major universities have had a captive for some time. So in many ways, we're somewhat behind the game here on having a captive. But so I think that's one of the things you'll want to take a look at for the claims and management track. On the collaborating towards risk mitigation, most of the tracks in there are really examples of case studies of where we've broken down the silos and are now doing much better working collaboratively and addressing many of the risks. One of the sessions that I'll speak because I'll be helping with the presentation is one looking at collaboration in the chemical safety and security environment that we're now working with the Academic Senate, Office of Risk Services, and as well as compliance, the Office of Compliance area as well, and audit, and really trying to address many of the risks that we're identifying when it comes to safety and security, and how we're using really this collaborative approach of getting the architects, the police, fire, student affairs, faculty, and basically anyone else that's involved in these areas to really sit down and do a full risk assessment of those areas. So that'll be certainly one there. On the emerging risk, obviously cyber risk, I don't know if it's still emerging, but we'll be talking a little bit about some of that as well as some of the privacy risks there. On enterprise risk management, we do our typical track that we've done in the past, but we'll also be talking about some of the different tools that are in that track. Last year, hospital and professional liability wasn't a specific track, but we have put that back on so that for our hospital and professional liability folks. And there'll also be, you'll probably find some sessions in there that actually might be good for other areas. And I believe we have a presentation discussing about legionnaires. And so that's somewhat of an area that's a concern for the hospitals from an infection control standpoint. And then human capital and wellness, the last couple, 3 here, loss prevention, student life, and health are the other tracks. So I encourage you to take a look at the program and take a look at those sessions. Even though that you may have were required to select some of the tracks, obviously once you get there, you might find a track that is more interesting than what you originally thought, and so you're certainly more than welcome to change that. The last thing I was going to mention, or two things I should say. One is the workgroup meetings. Even though it's not formally part of the Risk Summit schedule, that is the activities that are occurring on Monday are the workgroup sessions and ERM University. I believe we have over 35 workgroups, again, meeting at various times throughout on Monday. And this is the one chance where our workgroups do get an opportunity to truly meet and discuss at a system-wide level some of the different issues. We've also done something a little bit different on the workgroup meetings, I believe from 3 to 5 on Monday afternoon, at least for the EHS workgroups, is a joint meeting so that the different workgroups can learn what every other workgroup is doing. So it's meant to be an update. And so we certainly encourage some of the other workgroups, whether it be wellness and even the RMLC, to maybe talk about some of the different activities. So that way, again, trying to break down those silos even with our workgroup sessions. But then the last thing I will mention is ERM University. Last year was our first year that we did ERM University, and we had about 50 attendees. And we really limited last year to those outside the university. What we learned is a lot of people from within the university actually want to participate and learn more about enterprise risk management and have a full-on focus on that. So ERM University has been expanded for internal UC employees to attend, and I believe we've probably about 80 of the attendees are probably from the university, and we have about 40 from outside the university, including, I believe, University of Alaska, some from California State DMV, Franchise Tax Board, and some other areas. So we're looking for, it's going to be a fun full day of activities between the work groups and the ERM University, and really looking forward to this 10th anniversary event. So with that, I'll open up for any questions or comments regarding this year's Risk Summit. Looks like everyone's not going to speak at once here, but well, again, we look forward to everyone's participation in the Risk Summit, and if you do have any questions, you can certainly give me a call or email me, or Janine Crocker, who's the master of all things Risk Summit at this point, who can answer your questions regarding this year's Risk Summit.
All right. Thank you very much, Erich. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Hope to see you at the Risk Summit, and hope to see you for the June ERM Toolbox webinar. Thanks. Take care.
Thanks a lot.